has always vehemently denied those accusations. He says he is not afraid of the legal systems and he fully intends to cooperate with the order. Now, Vice President Glass has responded to the judge's order. He says he is innocent, but he will comply with Ecuadorian law and he will comply with the judge's order. So we can tell you that the Attorney General's request for a preventative detention of Vice President Jorge Glass has been granted. This is for Vice President Jorge Glass and his uncle Ricardo Rivera has been granted for reasons of illicit association. The Vice President's assets have been frozen. He will be detained in prison. Now, just to be clear, a preventative detention is not a punitive punishment. It does not mean that the Vice President or his uncle are guilty of anything, nor should it prejudice the case, the Odebrecht corruption case that they're meant to be facing. It ought not prejudice that particular case, but it was done because it may have been assumed that both were flight risk. They will now remain in Ecuador in prison, but again, this is not a punitive punishment, and it has been granted today. This is a fast developing situation. We literally only just got the information or the update. So we would advise our viewers to keep on watching teleSUR television, to keep on following our website, all of our social media networks. We will continue to update you on this particular situation. So again, for clarity, earlier today, Attorney General Carlos Baca applied for both the Vice President Jorge Glass and his uncle Ricardo Rivera to be detained under a preventative detention order. That detention has been granted. Their assets have been frozen and they will be held in prison, but this is not a punitive detention. And we will keep you updated on this particular situation as it continues to develop. So back to you in Caracas, Ray.
Although Vice President Jorge Glass said he weren't going anywhere. Thank you very much, our colleague Sieni from Quito in Ecuador. On Sunday, a bilateral ceasefire between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army, or ELN, came into effect. This is part of a peace talk underway between the two sides in Ecuador.
At 12 a.m. on Sunday morning, President Juan Manuel Santos signed the document which has filled the hearts of Colombians with hope. As Colombians face what could be the end of the armed conflict, this is the first time that the ELN and the government have agreed to end all hostilities. The ceasefire will now allow the peace talks to continue.
The bilateral ceasefire is one of Colombia's most historic moments, and since the death of Gaitán in 1948 till today, it will be the first time that we will not have any political violence. So this is really good news, but it is also a really strong humanitarian message that is given to almost 7 regions in the country where the ELN operated, as well as populations that live in regions littered with mines in the middle of the combat. This is important news.
3 months is the duration agreed for the ceasefire, lasting until January 9. While the news has spread hope, the concerns have not yet disappeared. Some parties in Congress have called on both the government and the ELN to respect the protocols agreed regarding the protection of social leaders and human rights defenders when the ceasefire begins.
The regulations established by the United Nations, the Catholic Church and all of the parties involved will need to be verified, because they will need to be effective in order to help reduce the violence against social leaders. We need to clarify what is behind the crimes that are committed against the population that is simply defending its territory.
In the next few months, commissions will be set up to make sure that the ceasefire agreement is fulfilled. This will also prevent any incidents that could sabotage the agreement. The Catholic Church will be in charge, together with 50 members of the United Nations, who were also involved in the peace process with the FARC. Despite this, fears remain, as there is still a paramilitary presence in the regions.
Free movement zones and ways to verify the agreements are being created, but this will be substantially different depending on the location. Obviously, it will be complex in the Choco department where there are fights within the ELN and the Gulf Cartel. because at any moment the military could intervene.
The commander of the ELN, Nicolas Rodriguez, has promised that the ELN is committed to fulfilling the bilateral ceasefire, and the Colombian military will suspend all actions against the former guerrilla group.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.